Hi everyone, in Algebra 2B today we're going to be going over your questions on 113.B. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to set n equal to this given number with the repeating decimal. So that would be 0.003. That would be 1, 6, and then that 1, 6 is just going to repeat. Then I am going to multiply because there's a repeating decimal of two numbers. So I need to multiply this by 100. So that'll be 100 n equals, I'm going to move the decimal point over 2 spaces. That would be 0.31616, and then it will be repeat. Now I'm going to subtract the two numbers from each other, meaning that the 1, 6 and the repeating decimal will just cancel out. On the left-hand side, I would be left with 99n. And on the right-hand side, I would have 0.316 minus 0.003, leaving me with 0.313. I'm going to divide both sides by 99, but when I do that, I do need to move the decimal point over 1, 2, 3 spaces to make it a whole number. And that would give me a result of 313 over 99,000. And that would be your result for number 113 part B. Now we're going to look at number 17. So the first thing that I need to do is put all my x's in parentheses, as well as factor out that negative sign. So if I factor out the negative off the x squared, I'd also factor out minus off of the 4x, making it negative 4x. And then I'd have the negative 1 on the outside. You only factor it from the x's, not from the negative 1. Now I'm going to complete this square. So half of negative 4 is going to be negative 2. And when I square that, that's actually plus 4. But don't forget that this is actually a negative 4. So when I do the opposite to the outside, I'm actually going to add 4. So that would be plus 3. Now this negative sign tells me that it's going to open down. I'm going to set x minus 2 equal to 0 to find my axis of symmetry, which would be at x is equal to positive 2. And this plus 3 will be my vertex. So I'm going to go over to positive 2, make my dotted line, my axis of symmetry. Then I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, that's my vertex. Now from there, I'm going to go over 1, down 1 in either direction. And then over 2, down 1, 2, 3, 4 in either direction. And this will be my parabola that opens down and should be pretty even on both sides. Now for number 18, I don't have a ton of space, so I'm going to try and squeeze this in here. So I'm sorry if my handwriting gets a little bit small. I'll try and zoom it in here. So find the number that's 2/11ths of the way from 2 to 4 and 1/6. This is going to be n is equal to the first number, 2, plus the fraction 2/11ths times 4 and 1/6 minus 2. I'm going to make this into improper fractions. So I'll just make this 2, or leave it 2, and then 2 over 11. So it'd be 25 over 6 minus 12 over 6. You just make a common denominator. Then it's going to be 2 plus 2/11ths times 13 over 6. But when I multiply this, 2 goes into 6 3 times, so my common denominator is going to be 33. So I'm going to multiply this by 33. That will end up giving me 66 over 33 plus 13 over 33. And that would give me a result of 79 over 33. And that's all you need to do for number 18. So sorry I had to squeeze that in there. My handwriting got a little small. I'll zoom back out. Now we'll look at the next problem, number 19. It says to solve by completing the square. So the first thing I need to do is divide everything by 3 and move the 7 over 3 to the other side. That would be x squared minus 1/3 x equals 7 over 3. When I take half of negative 1/3, negative 1/3 times 1/2 gives us negative 1/6. So that would be x minus 1/6 squared, which means that I'm going to add 1 over 36 to both sides. That common denominator is 36, so I have to multiply top and bottom by 12. So 7 times 12 gives us 84, plus 1 gives us 85. So that would be 85 over 36. Just need to confirm that doesn't divide by anything, so no. I'm going to take the square root of both sides, which would give me x minus 1/6 equals plus or minus the square root of 85 over 6. And all I have to do last is to move the 1/6 to the other side, giving me x is equal to positive 1/6 plus or minus the square root of 85 over 6. And that's all you have to do to complete the square. Now for number 20, what I want to do first is make that first one into an improper fraction, which would actually just be 6 over 5. So you can ignore that one. I made it 6 over 5. And I'm going to multiply this whole thing by 15. The bottom one I'm going to multiply by 100. And that would end up giving me, I need my calculator just for assistance, I'm going to do 18x plus 10y equals 15 times 30, which is 450. My bottom equation would be negative 18x minus 2y equals negative 378, which works out perfectly for us because the 18x's actually cancel, and you are left with 8y is equal to 450 minus 378, which is 72. Now, when you divide both of those by 8, you get y is equal to 9. Now to solve for x, I have to go back to one of those equations. I'm just going to go to the top one. So that would be 18x plus 10 times 9 equals 450. So I'm going to subtract 90, and that would give me 18x is equal to 360, because 450 minus 90 is 360. Then divide that by 18 gives us x is equal to 20. So that one worked out pretty easily for us, didn't take a whole lot of space. Now moving on to number 21, I'm going to start with solving for y on the bottom equation by moving the 2 to the other side. So y would be equal to 3x minus 2. Now I'm going to plug that into the top equation, giving me x squared plus 3x minus 2 times 3x minus 2, and then I'm going to subtract the 4 equals 0. I'm going to multiply that out, which would give me 9x squared, then minus 6x, minus 6x, plus 4, and then minus 4. Now those 4's are going to cancel, and you actually have 10x squared minus 12x equals 0. What you can factor out of both of those is a 2 and an x, which would leave me with 5x minus 6. Now to solve for x, you set each of them equal to 0, which would give me 2x is equal to 0, and then 5x minus 6 equals 0. So the first one will give me x is equal to 0. My second one is going to give me x is equal to 6 over 5. But now I have to solve for y. So the first one would be x is equal to 0, plugging it into that equation. Would be y is equal to 3 times 0 minus 2, giving me y is equal to negative 2. The second one would be x is equal to 6 over 5. So I would do y is equal to 3 times 6 over 5 minus 2. Now making a common denominator, that would be 18 minus 10, which would be 8 over 5. So your answer is going to be, the first one would be 0, negative 2. The second one would be 6 over 5, 8 over 5. Because you should have two x's that go with two different y values. Now for number 22, we have to choose to solve for one of those letters. Doesn't matter which one you decide to choose from. I'm just going to choose to solve for x in the top equation, giving me x is equal to 4y minus 15. Now I just need to plug that into the second equation, and that would be 3 times 4y minus 15 plus z equals 20. Now when I distribute that, I get 12y minus 45 plus z equals 20. I'm going to add the 45 to both sides. So really I have 12y plus z equals 65. Now what I'm going to do is I take these two equations and I can add them together. And that would give me 2y minus z equals 5. Added to that cancels out the z's. So you have 14y is equal to 70. And 70 divided by 14 is 5. Now you can solve for x in this equation, giving me x is equal to 4 times 5 minus 15. 4 times 5 is 20, minus 15 would be 5, so x would be equal to 5. Then lastly, we need to solve for z, so I'm just going to plug it into the middle equation. That would be 3 times 5 plus z equals 20. And I would have to subtract 15 from both sides, giving me z is also equal to 5. So x, y, and z are all equal to 5. Now looking at number 23. The tricky part about this one is that we have to eliminate one of the letters, and it's not really easy to choose one. So I'm actually going to just choose to eliminate x. So I'm going to multiply this top equation by negative 3, giving me negative 3x plus 6y plus 3z is equal to 24. I'm adding that to the middle equation of 3x minus y minus 2z equals negative 5. Now my x's are going to cancel, and I would be left with 5y plus z equals 19. I'm going to do the same thing with my bottom two equation, multiplying the bottom equation by negative 3, leaving the top equation as is. So 3x minus y minus 2z equals negative 5. I'm adding to negative 3x minus 3y minus 3z equals negative 27. So my x's again will cancel, and I'd be left with negative 4y minus 5z is equal to negative 32. Now I'm going to either do substitution or elimination. I'm going to choose to do substitution. I'm going to solve for z in this equation, making z equal to negative 5y plus 19. And I can plug that into this equation. So negative 4y minus 5 times negative 5y plus 19 equals negative 32. So if I distribute the negative 5, I get negative 4y plus 25y minus 95 equals negative 32. So I'm going to add 95 to the other side, giving me 21y is going to be equal to 95 minus 32, which is 63. Divide that by 21 gives me y is equal to 3. Now to solve for z, I can plug that in here. So it'd be negative 5 times 3 plus 19. So negative 15 plus 19 would give you z is equal to 4. Lastly, we're solving for x. So you can use any of these equations to solve for x. I'm just going to choose the bottom one. So that would be x plus 3 plus 4 equals 9, meaning that I'm going to subtract 3 and 4 from the right side. So x is going to be equal to 2. So 2, 3, 4 is our answer for 23. Now number 24, I cubed is equal to negative I. And that would give me negative 2i minus I over minus negative 3 plus 3. So negative 2i minus I would be negative 3i. Two negatives make a positive, so positive 3 plus positive 3 would be 6, meaning my answer is just negative 1/2 I for number 24. There was no multiplication that had to be done on that one. Now for number 25, I have to multiply top and bottom by the conjugate, meaning that I'm going to flip one of the signs. So I'm going to flip the negative 4 to positive 4. And then I need to multiply through. So root 2 times 2 root 2 would be 2 times 2. Root 2 times 4 would be 4 root 2. Negative 5 times 2 root 2 would be negative 10 root 2. And negative 5 times 4 would be negative 20. 2 root 2 times 2 would be 4 times 2. 2 root 2 times 4 would be 8 root 2. Negative 4 times 2 root 2 would be negative 8 root 2. And negative 4 times 4 would be negative 16. The 8 root 2's are going to cancel. In the top I have 4 minus 20 would be negative 16. And then 4 root 2 minus 10 root 2 would be negative 6 root 2. And then I have 8 minus 16, which should be negative 8. Now all of those are negative and they're all divisible by 2. So my answer is going to be 8 plus 3 root 2 all over 4, unless you were to split it. Now for number 26, I have to change this from radical form to exponential form. So because there's a small 6 on the outside, that would be xy cubed to the 1/6 times xy squared to the 1/3. Now you're going to distribute that, giving me x to the 1/6 times x to the 1/2. Oops, that should be a y. And then x to the 1/3, and then y to the 2/3. So now I have to add the x's and the y's. So x would be to the 1/6 plus 1/3, and then y would be to the 1/2 plus 2/3. Common denominator would be 6 on the first one and 6 on the second one. So that would give me x to the 2 plus 1 would be 3, 6, so that would be 1/2. And then y to the 3 over 6 plus 4 over 6 would be 7 over 6. So my answer would be x to the 1/2 y to the 7 over 6. Now for number 27, you should be able to recognize that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. And then I have to multiply top and bottom by the square root of 3 and simplify the square root of 48. So that would be 224, then 2 and 12, then yikes, 2 and 6, and 2 and 3. So my first one would be 2 root 3 over 3 plus, well, these 2's would cancel, so that would just be root 3 over 1, and then minus, so there's a pair of 2's, so 4 times 3 would be minus 12 root 3. Common denominator is going to be 3. So I have 2 plus 3. 2 plus 3 minus 36 gives us negative 31 root 3 over 3. Now only a few more problems. So number 28, I have to solve for x. So the first thing that I'm going to do is bring everything over to the left-hand side and factor out an x, meaning that I would be left with 2x squared plus x and then minus 3 equals 0. You're going to start by multiplying your first term times the left, so first term times the last. So that'd be 2 times negative 3, giving me negative 6. I need to find two numbers that multiply to give me negative 6, but add up to give me positive 1. And those two values would be just the opposite of that. So 3 times negative 2 adds up to give me 1, but multiplies to give me negative 6. Now the 3 and the negative 2 are what replace your middle term. So I would have x times 2x squared plus 3x minus 2x minus 3 equals 0. Now I'm going to separate each of these into two separate parentheses, leaving the x on the outside. And you're looking for the common term in both of them. So the first one, the only thing I could factor out is an x. So that would leave me with 2x plus 3. The second one, the only thing I can factor out is a negative 1, leaving me with 2x plus 3. Now I'm going to factor out the 2x plus 3, which would be x times 2x plus 3, and then I'd be left with x minus 1. Now I have 3 equations that I'm solving for. First one is obviously solved for, so x is equal to 0. Then 2x plus 3 equals 0. Move the 3 to the other side. And then x minus 1 equals 0. Move the 1 to the other side. So I have 3 answers. I'm going to have x is equal to negative 3 over 2. X is 0, and then x is 1. So those 5 steps should be becoming pretty familiar to you because we've been doing them for many lessons now. So just make sure you take it step by step if you're having trouble with it still. Number 29, I'm going to start by moving the x to the other side, giving me 3x squared minus x minus 2 equals 0. I'm going to multiply the first term times the last term, so 3 times negative 2 gives me negative 6. I have to find two numbers that multiply to give me negative 6, but add up to give me negative 1. And that would be the same as this last one, but it would be negative 3 and positive 2, because that adds up to give me -1, but multiplies to give me -6 still. So this is what's going to replace your negative x in your middle term. So really you have 3x squared minus 3x plus 2x minus 2 equals 0. This is your first parenthesis, this is your second. And what I want to do first is recognize what I can factor out of the first parentheses and then what I can factor out of the second parentheses. The first one I can factor out a 3 and an x, leaving me with x minus 1. The second one I can factor out just a 2, leaving me with x minus 1. Now for step 5, I factor out this x minus 1, leaving me with 3x plus 2. And I have to solve for 2 equations. So I set x minus 1 equal to 0, and then I set 3x plus 2 equals 0. Move the 1 to the other side, move the 2 to the other side. So I get 3x is equal to -2. So my first answer is going to be -2/3. My second answer will be +1. And that is all. So if there's no factoring at the beginning, then there's only 2 answers. If there was, then you have 3. Now lastly, we're looking at number 30, same type of problem, and we're still factoring out an x. I'm going to move everything to the right hand side. So really I have 0 equals x times 3x squared plus 7x plus 2. Now I factored out the x already. Now I multiply the first term times the last term, so that would be 3 times 2 gives us 6. I need 2 numbers that multiply to give me 6, but add up to give me 7. And that would just be 6 times 1. Adds up to give me 7, multiplies to give me 6. So now this 6 and this 1 are going to replace the 7x. So I have x times 3x squared plus 6x plus 1x plus 2 equals 0. This is your first parenthesis, this is your second. So 3x squared plus 6x plus 1x plus 2. Now there's nothing I can factor out of the second parenthesis, so I'm just going to factor out a 1. In the first parenthesis, I can actually factor out a 3 and an x, leaving me with x plus 2. Factor out only a +1 leaves me with exactly what I had before, x plus 2. So now I have x times x plus 2, and then times 3x plus 1. So now, again, since I have an x on the outside, I have 3 equations to solve for. I'm going to set x equal to 0, x plus 2 equal to 0, and then 3x plus 1 equals 0. Move the 1. So now I have my answer would be x is equal to -2, -1/3, and 0. And that should conclude all of your questions from 113B. I hope you guys all have a great day. Bye.